The Grand Galactic Council Station floated in the darkness of space like a massive jewel. Its towers reached out in 12 directions, one for each of the elder species that ruled the galaxy. Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the window of the human quarters, looking out at the alien structure. He had been here for 3 months now, and he was tired of talking. Behind him, Ambassador Lisa Chen reviewed the latest proposal on her datapad. Her face was calm, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. They had both read the terms. They both knew what was coming. "They think we're desperate," Lisa said quietly. She set down the datapad and walked to stand beside Jake. "Every word, every gesture from the council says they believe we have no choice but to accept." Jake nodded slowly. Outside the window, he could see the Velcrin warships stationed around the council building. The Velcrin were tall, scaled creatures who had started the border conflict that brought humanity to these negotiations. They had attacked 3 human mining operations, killed 200 colonists, and now they sat on the council as victims demanding justice. "How long until the meeting?" Jake asked. "1 hour," Lisa replied. "The council wants our final answer." The terms were simple and brutal. Humanity would surrender 3 colony worlds to Velcrin control. Earth would pay 2 trillion credits in reparations. Human military ships would be limited to 1,500 vessels, all under galactic oversight. Human exploration would be restricted to approved zones, and humanity would accept council governance over all major decisions for the next 50 years. It was everything humanity had fought against for 3 centuries. Since leaving Earth and reaching the stars, humans had valued their independence above all else. They built their own ships, founded their own colonies, and made their own choices. The council wanted to take all of that away. Jake turned from the window and walked to the conference table. Spread across its surface were reports from Earth, from the colonies, from the military command. He had read them all a dozen times. The numbers told a clear story that the council did not know. Lisa joined him at the table. "Captain Harper sent a message an hour ago," she said. "The fleet is ready. All personnel have been briefed on the evacuation plan. If we give the word, we can be off this station in 90 minutes. "And back home?" Jake asked. "Every colony has activated emergency protocols," Lisa said. "The defense networks are online. The reserve fleets have been mobilized. We have enough supplies stockpiled to last 2 years without any trade from council space." She paused. "We knew this day might come, Jake. We prepared for it." Jake picked up one of the reports. It was from military intelligence, marked with the highest security level. For 3 months, while sitting at the negotiation table and listening to council demands, human intelligence officers had been very busy. They had mapped every council military base within 50 light years. They had analyzed fleet positions, supply lines, and communication networks. They had even gained access to some of the council's military databases through careful hacking. The council thought humans were primitive newcomers who needed guidance. They had no idea that human computer systems were generations ahead of theirs. They did not know that human engineers had developed weapons that existed in no council database. They believed their own propaganda about human weakness. "We should go over the speech one more time," Lisa suggested. Jake shook his head. "I know what to say. Keep it simple. Keep it respectful. Give them one last chance to back down." "They won't," Lisa said. "I know," Jake agreed. "But we try anyway. That's what separates us from them." A chime sounded from the door. Captain Ben Harper entered, wearing his dress uniform. His face was serious, but calm. "Admiral, Ambassador, all human ships are ready. I have 80 personnel still on the station, mostly in this section. We can get everyone to the hangar in 10 minutes if needed." "Good," Jake said. Stay ready, but don't make any moves that might alert station security. We do this clean." Harper nodded and left. Jake looked at Lisa. "Last chance to change your mind? Once I say the words, there's no going back." Lisa smiled. It was a small, sad smile. "Jake, we both know this was decided months ago. The Council made their choice when they attacked our colonies and then demanded we apologize for defending ourselves. Earth made its choice when they sent us here with authorization to walk away if needed. Now it's just a matter of making it official." They walked together through the corridors of the human section. Other members of the diplomatic team watched them pass. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Some looked scared. Others looked relieved. A few looked eager, ready to finally stop pretending that these negotiations were ever going anywhere. The council chamber was a massive circular room with seats rising in tiers all around. 12 species sat in judgment, with the Velkreen delegation occupying a prominent position. High Chancellor Trelvor, the Velkreen leader, watched Jake and Lisa enter with his cold reptilian eyes. He looked confident. He looked like someone who believed he had already won. Counselor Nix, one of the few aliens who had shown humanity any respect, gave Jake a small nod as they passed his seat. The gesture said more than words could. It said, "I'm sorry. I tried. But I'm only one voice." Jake took his position at the center of the chamber. Lisa stood beside him. Above them, in the high seats, the 12 elder species looked down. This was meant to make whoever stood at the center feel small and powerless. Jake had stood here many times over the past 3 months, always polite, always patient. Today would be different. High Chancellor Trelvor spoke first. His voice boomed through the chamber, translated by systems into dozens of languages. "The Council has been generous with time. We have listened to human concerns. We have offered reasonable terms for peace. Now we require your answer. Will humanity accept the Council's wisdom and agree to our terms?" Jake looked up at the faces staring down at him. He saw contempt from some, indifference from others, and pity from a few. They all believed this moment would end with human submission. They had no doubt. "I have an answer," Jake said clearly. His voice was calm and steady. "On behalf of humanity, on behalf of Earth and all her colonies, on behalf of every human being in this galaxy, I have one word for your terms." He paused. The chamber was completely silent. Every alien leaned forward, waiting to hear humanity's surrender. "No," Jake said. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. For 3 seconds, the entire council chamber was completely silent. Then chaos erupted. High Chancellor Trelvor rose from his seat, his scales rippling with anger. "You dare refuse the council? You dare reject our mercy?" Other council members began shouting. Some demanded immediate consequences. Others questioned whether they had heard correctly. The Velkreen delegation was on their feet, pointing at Jake and Lisa with accusations flying from their mouths. Jake stood completely still. He did not raise his voice. He did not show any anger. He simply waited for the noise to die down. Lisa stood beside him with her hands folded, her face showing nothing but calm professionalism. When the chamber finally quieted enough for him to be heard, Jake spoke again. "I thank the Council for their time these past 3 months. I acknowledge the complexity of galactic politics and the challenges of bringing peace to this region of space. However, the terms presented are not acceptable to humanity." "Not acceptable?" Trelvor's voice dripped with contempt. "You are newcomers. You have been in space for barely 3 centuries. We have maintained order in this galaxy for 10,000 years. You think you can dictate terms to us?" "We do not seek to dictate anything," Jake said. His voice remained level and clear. We simply will not accept terms that treat us as conquered subjects rather than equal partners in peace. The colony worlds you demand are home to millions of humans. We will not abandon them. The reparations you ask for would cripple our economy for generations. We will not pay them. The military restrictions would leave us defenseless. We will not accept them. Lisa stepped forward. When humanity came to this station 3 months ago, we came in good faith. We believed the Council wanted genuine peace. We believed there would be fair negotiations between equal parties. Instead, we have been lectured, dismissed, and treated as children who need to be controlled. She pulled out her datapad and held it up. We have recordings of council members calling humans dangerous animals in private sessions. We have intercepted communications discussing how to bring humanity to heel and make an example of us. We have watched as the Velkrin, who initiated hostilities against our colonies, have been treated as victims while we are blamed for defending our people. A ripple of surprise went through the chamber. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. They had not known humans were capable of intercepting their private communications. It was the first hint that humanity might be more advanced than they appeared. Councillor Nix leaned forward in his seat. Ambassador Chen, if you have evidence of unfair treatment, the Council should review it. Perhaps we can restart negotiations on better terms. Thank you, Councillor Nix, Lisa said. Your voice has been one of reason throughout these talks. Unfortunately, trust has been broken. These negotiations were never intended to be fair. The Council has already decided that humanity must be controlled, must be restricted, must be kept in our place. We will not accept that future. Jake took over again. Therefore, I am announcing that all human diplomatic personnel will be leaving this station within the next 2 hours. All human trade agreements with Council species are suspended pending review. All human observers and liaisons in Council space are being recalled. Humanity will chart its own course from this moment forward. The chamber exploded again. This time, the anger was mixed with shock. The Council had expected surrender or perhaps desperate counteroffers. They had not expected humanity to simply walk away. Councillor Dravix, a warlike species known for aggressive expansion, stood up. His voice was a growl. You think you can survive without the Council? You think your few hundred ships can stand against our combined might? We have thousands of warships. We control the trade routes. We have alliances that span the galaxy. You have nothing. Jake looked directly at Dravix. We have something you clearly do not understand. We have dignity. We have the will to defend ourselves. And we have the certainty that peace built on submission is no peace at all. He turned to address the entire chamber. Humanity did not come to the stars to bow before others. We did not build our ships and colonies to hand them over when threatened. If the Council wants war, we cannot stop you. Your fleets outnumber ours. Your territory dwarfs ours. But know this, we will fight. We will make you bleed for every light year. And when it is over, the galaxy will know that humanity does not surrender its freedom, not to threats and not to supposed wisdom from those who refuse to treat us as equals. High Chancellor Trelvor's voice was cold now, calculated. Then you choose war. The Council will authorize a peacekeeping force to restore order to your space. Your colonies will be occupied. Your ships will be impounded. Your people will learn that the Council's authority cannot be defied. Do what you must, Jake said. We will do the same. Lisa tapped her datapad. Throughout the station, signals went out. Human personnel began moving toward the hangar bays. Captain Harper coordinated the evacuation from the human ships docked nearby. Within minutes, diplomats, support staff, and security personnel were streaming through corridors toward their vessels. As Jake and Lisa turned to leave the chamber, Councillor Nix spoke quietly. His words were meant only for them, but in the sudden silence they carried across the room. Admiral Morrison, Ambassador Chen, I fear you do not understand what you have done. The Council has crushed rebellions before. Species that defied us have been broken. Please reconsider. There is still time to find compromise. Jake stopped and looked back at the kindly alien. Counselor Nix, with respect, I think it is the Council that does not understand. You see us as primitives playing with weapons we do not comprehend. You believe we are desperate because we are outnumbered. You think this is the act of fools or the ignorant. He smiled then, and it was not a kind smile. We have studied your tactics. We have analyzed your fleet compositions. We have learned your history, and we have prepared for exactly this outcome. These 3 months were not wasted on us, even if you believe your time was wasted on us. Lisa added, the Council should ask itself one question before sending fleets into human space. If we are so certain to lose, why are we walking away from this table? What do we know that you do not? They left the chamber together, walking with unhurried dignity. Behind them, the Council descended into furious debate. Some wanted to send ships immediately, others urged caution. A few, like Nix, wondered if perhaps humanity knew something the elder species had missed. In the hangar bay, human ships were already sealing their airlocks. Captain Harper stood by the last shuttle, waiting for Jake and Lisa. All personnel accounted for, he reported. We left nothing behind except some furniture and basic supplies. And the intelligence packages? Lisa asked. Uploaded to secure servers and wiped from all local systems? Harper confirmed. They'll find no trace of what we learned here. The shuttle lifted off smoothly. Through the windows, Jake watched the Council station grow smaller. Around them, human ships formed up into a convoy. Within moments, they jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Council station and its outraged inhabitants behind. On the station, High Chancellor Trelvor addressed an emergency session. The humans have made their choice. In 1 week, we will send a combined fleet to their nearest colony. They will see our power, and they will surrender. This rebellion ends now. The vote was quick. Only 3 council members voted against military action. Counselor Nix was one of them. He sat in his chamber afterward, reviewing everything he knew about humanity. Something felt wrong. Species that knew they were beaten did not walk away with confidence. They did not smile as they rejected overwhelming force. He pulled up historical records and began to read. Somewhere in the past, there had to be a lesson about underestimating newcomers. He just hoped he would find it before the Council made a terrible mistake. 3 weeks passed since humanity walked away from the Council table. The combined Council fleet, over 2,000 ships strong, moved steadily toward human territory. Fleet Admiral Kresh commanded the armada from his flagship, a massive Velkrin battleship that had broken rebellions on a dozen worlds. He expected many things. He expected human ships trying to harry his fleet. He expected desperate messages begging for renewed negotiations. He expected confusion and panic as the Council's might became clear. What he got instead was silence. Still nothing? Kresh asked his communications officer. No transmissions detected from any human ship or station, sir, the officer reported. All their normal communication channels are dark. Even their civilian broadcasts have stopped. Kresh's second officer, a veteran of 30 campaigns, looked troubled. It could be a communications blackout, preparing for war. Or it could be surrender, Kresh said. They know they cannot win. Perhaps they are simply waiting to see our fleet and capitulate immediately. But the second officer did not look convinced, and neither did several other members of the command staff. There was something unnatural about the complete silence. Human space was not empty. Intelligence reported over 40 colony worlds and hundreds of stations. They had mining operations, trade routes, and exploration vessels. All of it should have generated some communications, even in wartime. Back on the council station, Counselor Nix sat in his chambers, surrounded by historical records. He had been reading for days now, barely sleeping. The more he read, the more worried he became. He found a pattern in the ancient records, a pattern the council had forgotten. 8,000 years ago, a species called the Orcs had challenged council authority. The council sent a fleet. The Orcs had gone silent before the battle. When the council fleet arrived, they found the Orcs had used the time to build weapons the council had never seen. Half the council fleet was destroyed in the first hour of combat. 5,000 years ago, the Rallic did the same thing. Silence before the storm. They had used the time to study council tactics and prepare ambushes. It took the council 3 years to subdue them, and only after terrible losses. 3,000 years ago, the Vren again, silence. Again, unexpected weapons. Again, heavy council casualties before victory. The pattern was clear. Species that went silent were not preparing to surrender. They were preparing to fight, and they were using the silence to hide their preparations. But each of those species had eventually lost. The council's numbers and resources always won in the end. Why should humanity be different? Nix highlighted a passage from the Orcs records. They studied us while pretending to negotiate. By the time we realized their true capabilities, they had already mapped our weaknesses. He felt a chill. That was exactly what Ambassador Chen had implied. What had humanity learned during 3 months at the council table? He opened a secure channel to Fleet Admiral Kresh. Admiral, I urge caution as you approach human space. I have concerns about their silence. Kresh's face appeared on the screen, looking annoyed. Counselor Nix, I respect your advocacy for peace, but this is a military matter. The humans are silent because they are defeated and they know it. My fleet will reach their first colony in 3 days. You will see then. The channel closed. Nix sat back, unsatisfied. He pulled up human trade records from before the silence began. Human merchant ships had been common throughout council space. They traded in rare minerals, advanced computer components, and surprisingly sophisticated sensors. Then, exactly 4 hours after Jake and Lisa left the council station, every human merchant ship in council space had simply vanished. Nix checked the records more carefully. The timing was too precise. The ships had not run for human space. They had not been seen heading anywhere. They had been in various ports and stations, and then they were gone. How do you evacuate hundreds of ships from across dozens of star systems in perfect coordination? The answer was obvious. You plan it in advance. Humanity had known they would walk away from negotiations. They had prepared the evacuation of their merchants before Jake Morrison ever said the word no in the council chamber. Everything had been planned. If they planned the merchant evacuation, what else had they planned? Far from the council station, in human space, Commander Greg Sullivan reviewed the fleet disposition. He stood in a command center buried deep beneath the surface of a colony world. Around him, dozens of officers coordinated defensive preparations across 40 human worlds. Status of the defense satellites? Greg asked. All systems online and hidden, an officer reported. The council fleet won't detect them until they get within weapon range. Colonial Defense Forces? Ground installations are ready. Orbital stations are armed and shielded. Evacuation of non-essential personnel to deep bunkers is 95% complete. Greg nodded. Every colony had been preparing for this for months. The Council thought human colonies were lightly defended farming worlds. They would learn differently. Dr. Amy Richardson entered the command center. She was the lead military intelligence analyst, and she looked exhausted. She had not slept more than a few hours since the fleet left the Council station. "I have the latest analysis of the Council fleet composition," she said, pulling up holographic displays. "The Velkrin make up 40% of the fleet. They favor close-range combat and boarding actions. Their shields are strong, but their point defense systems are outdated. The Draviks are 20%. They use missile swarms and long-range bombardment. The other Council species fill in the remaining 40% with various ship types." "Weaknesses?" Greg asked. "Their formations are predictable. They rely on overwhelming numbers rather than tactical innovation. Their communication systems are centralized, making them vulnerable to jamming and hacking. Most importantly, they have never fought an enemy using the weapons we have developed. They have no doctrine for defending against relativistic railguns or coordinated drone swarms." Greg smiled grimly. "How long until they reach Colony 7? 72 hours at their current speed." "Then we have 72 hours to finish preparations, send the final updates to all defense commanders, and send a message to Admiral Morrison on Earth. Tell him the Council fleet is coming right where we expected." Back in space, the Council fleet continued its advance. Scouts reported that they were approaching the outer edges of human territory. Admiral Kresh ordered the fleet to battle formation. Over 2,000 ships arranged themselves in the classic Council attack pattern. Battleships at the front, cruisers on the flanks, carriers in the rear with fighter screens. It was a formation that had conquered dozens of systems. It was a formation that had never failed. Kresh looked at it with satisfaction. The humans would see this armada, and they would understand their mistake. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "we are detecting objects ahead. Multiple contacts around the colony world." "Defense stations?" Kresh asked. "Yes, sir, but far more than we expected. I count over 500 individual platforms." Kresh frowned. Intelligence had suggested humans might have a few dozen defense platforms. 500 meant either the intelligence was wrong, or humanity had been building them secretly for a long time. "Open a channel to the colony," Kresh ordered. The communications officer worked for a moment, then shook his head. "No response, sir. They are receiving our transmission but not replying." "Then send them a message they cannot ignore," Kresh said. "All ships, target the defense platforms. Prepare to fire on my command." The fleet weapons powered up. Thousands of guns aimed at the satellites orbiting the human colony. Kresh stood on his bridge, waiting for the humans to panic, waiting for them to send desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, the humans finally broke their silence. A single message came from the colony world. It was text only, no voice, no video. Just 7 words that appeared on every Council ship's screen. "Leave now. This is your only warning." Kresh read the message and laughed. "They warn us? They think their few satellites can stop the Council fleet? Show them what happens to those who defy the elder species. All ships, fire!" 2,000 Council ships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the human defense platforms. The attack lit up space like a second sun. It was a display of power meant to break the human spirit. But as the Council weapons reached the human positions, something unexpected happened. The defense platforms activated shields that should not have existed on platforms that small. Point defense systems that were far too accurate began shooting down missiles. And then, from the colony surface and from the satellites themselves, humanity fired back. The Council fleet's sensors screamed warnings. Objects were incoming at speeds that should not be possible. The objects were not missiles. They were solid slugs fired from railguns, moving at a significant fraction of light speed. and there were thousands of them. Fleet Admiral Kresh had exactly 4 seconds to realize he had made a terrible mistake. Then the first relativistic projectiles hit his fleet, and the Council learned what war with humanity really meant. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, 800 Council ships were destroyed or crippled. The survivors retreated in chaos, their perfect formations shattered, their confidence destroyed. Admiral Kresh's flagship limped away with half its systems offline. He sat in his command chair, staring at the damage reports with disbelief. 800 ships, nearly 40% of his fleet, gone. In 17 minutes. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" His second officer, wounded but alive, pulled up tactical data. "The projectiles, sir, they were not missiles. Solid metal fired at relativistic speeds. Our shields were designed to stop energy weapons and explosive missiles, not kinetic impacts at those velocities. Each round hit with the force of a nuclear weapon." "And the drones?" "Thousands of them, sir. Small, fast, operating in perfect coordination. They targeted our sensor arrays first, then our weapons. Some of them rammed our ships directly. They sacrificed themselves to create openings for the larger attacks." The officer's hands shook as he worked the controls. "I have never seen drone warfare like this. Their coordination suggests artificial intelligence far beyond our own. What about our counterattacks? We fired everything we had." The human defense platforms had shields we did not expect, and their point defense was accurate beyond our projections. They shot down 70% of our missiles before impact. The platforms we did destroy were immediately replaced by others moving up from the planet's surface. They had hundreds more in reserve. Kresh pulled up a visual of the battle. He watched it again, trying to understand. The Council fleet had attacked with overwhelming force. They should have crushed the human defenses. Instead, they had walked into a killing field designed specifically to counter their tactics. "They knew," Kresh said slowly. "They knew exactly how we would attack. They prepared for this specific scenario." Back on Earth, General Ryan Torres watched the battle reports come in. He stood in the war room with dozens of other officers, and when the final numbers appeared, someone started clapping. Soon, the entire room erupted in cheers. "Quiet," Ryan said, his voice cutting through the celebration. The room fell silent. "This was just one battle. The Council still has over 1,000 ships out there, and they will be angry now. They will adapt. This war is just beginning." But he allowed himself a small smile. The first battle was crucial. It set the tone. The Council had come to human space expecting easy victory. Instead, they had been bloodied. They would have to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humanity. Commander Kate Matthews climbed out of her cockpit, exhausted. She had led a squadron of the new human strike fighters during the battle. The small ships were built for speed and stealth, designed to get inside enemy formations and cause chaos. Her squadron had destroyed 15 Council ships without a single loss. "How did it feel?" another pilot asked. Kate pulled off her helmet. "Like we trained, they flew exactly like the simulations predicted. Big, slow formations, predictable patterns. They made it easy." "They won't make it easy next time." "Good," Kate said. "I prefer a challenge." High Chancellor Trelvor received the battle reports in his palace on the Velkrin homeworld. He read them 3 times, certain there must be an error. 800 ships lost. 800. Against 1 human colony. He called an emergency council session. The holographic images of the other council members appeared around his chamber. Every face showed shock, anger, or fear. "Explain this disaster," Trelvor demanded. Fleet Admiral Kresh appeared, his image showing the bandages on his face where shrapnel had cut him. "High Chancellor, the humans had weapons we have never encountered. Kinetic weapons fired at speeds approaching light. Drone swarms with coordination suggesting advanced artificial intelligence. Defense platforms with shields beyond their technological level. They knew our tactics and built specific counters to them. Counselor Dravix growled. "You are making excuses. You failed." "No," came a quiet voice. Counselor Nick spoke up. "Admiral Kresh is telling the truth. I tried to warn you all, but none of you listened. I have been researching our history. This pattern has happened before. Species go silent, study us, prepare specifically for our attack methods. The difference is that every other species eventually lost because we had the numbers to overwhelm them through attrition. But those species did not have weapons like what the humans just deployed." "It is one colony," Trelvor insisted. "We have over 1,000 ships remaining. We can bring more. The humans have perhaps 40 colonies. We can still crush them." "At what cost?" Nix asked. "If every colony defends like this one, we could lose the entire fleet. And the humans have not even deployed their main battle groups yet." That statement hung in the air like a death sentence. Trelvor's blood ran cold. "What do you mean their main battle groups?" Ambassador Lisa Chen had told them during her speech. She had said humanity would fight. She had said they would make the Council bleed, but she never said the colonies were humanity's only defense. Where were the human warships? The answer came 3 days later. Human fleets appeared simultaneously in 3 different Council sectors. They struck shipyards, supply depots, and communication stations. They did not engage in prolonged battles. They hit hard, destroyed their targets, and jumped away before Council forces could respond. General Ryan coordinated the attacks from Earth. He watched the tactical displays showing human ships moving through Council space like ghosts. "Strike Team 3, excellent work on the Dravix shipyard. Strike Team 7, the communication hub is confirmed destroyed. All teams return to designated rally points." Dr. Amy Richardson stood beside him. "The Council is in chaos. Their communication networks are disrupted. Supply chains are breaking down. Some member species are beginning to question whether this war is worth the cost." "How many of our ships lost?" Ryan asked. 12 out of 400 engaged, Amy reported. "Acceptable losses for the damage inflicted." Ryan nodded. This was the strategy humanity had developed during those 3 months of negotiations. While sitting at the Council table, human intelligence had mapped every major Council installation within reach. They knew where the shipyards were. They knew which supply routes were critical. They knew which communication hubs coordinated fleet movements. And now, they were systematically destroying all of it. The Council called another emergency session. This time, 4 member species announced they were withdrawing from the war. They had not signed up to lose ships and infrastructure against an enemy who fought like this. They had expected a quick victory against primitives. This was something else entirely. "Cowards!" Trelvor spat. "We will prosecute this war with or without you." But even as he said it, he knew the situation was deteriorating. The Velkrin Empire had lost 30% of its fleet in 3 weeks. Human attacks had destroyed 2 major shipyards, cutting the Empire's ability to replace losses. Trade was collapsing as merchants refused to travel routes that might have human raiders. Counselor Nix requested a private meeting with Trelvor. The High Chancellor granted it, though he was in no mood for the Counselor's usual preaching about peace and caution. "You need to end this war," Nix said bluntly. "Surrender? Never. The Council has never surrendered." "The Council has never faced an enemy like this," Nix said. He pulled up data files. "I have finally identified what makes humanity different from all the other species we have fought. Every other species was surprised by our strength. They prepared poorly and hoped for the best. Humanity did the opposite. They assumed they would face overwhelming force. They planned for the worst-case scenario. And then, they prepared weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter our advantages. He highlighted sections of the analysis. Their railguns neutralize our shield advantage. Their drones counter our numbers. Their hit-and-run tactics prevent us from using our fleet concentration. And most importantly, they fight without the honor codes that restrict our own tactics. They strike civilian infrastructure. They use psychological warfare. They refuse to engage in fair battles. They do everything necessary to win. Then we will adapt, Trelvor said. We will fight as they fight. Can you, Nix asked, can you convince 12 different species with 12 different military traditions to completely change their doctrine? Can you do it fast enough to matter? The humans have been preparing for this specific war for years, maybe decades. How long will it take us to catch up? Trelvor had no answer. He looked at the casualty reports, the economic damage, the political chaos. 4 species had withdrawn from the coalition. Others were sending quiet messages asking about peace terms. The unity that had always been the Council's greatest strength was cracking. What do you suggest? He finally asked. Send me to Earth, Nix said. Let me negotiate with humanity while we still have something to negotiate with. Every day this war continues, our position gets weaker. The humans are not trying to conquer us. They are simply making us hurt enough that we will leave them alone. Give them what they want now, before the cost becomes too high. Trelvor looked at the counselor for a long moment. Everything in him rebelled against the idea of negotiating with the humans after they had refused the council's terms. But he was not a fool. He could see the numbers. Humanity was winning this war. Go, he said finally. But understand this. If you fail, if the humans demand too much, we will fight to the last ship. The Council's authority cannot be completely destroyed. Nix bowed and left. As he prepared for the journey to Earth, he reviewed everything he knew about Admiral Jake Morrison and Ambassador Lisa Chen. They had been reasonable people during the negotiations. They had tried to find compromise before the Council's ultimatum forced them to leave. Perhaps they would be reasonable again, now that the Council understood what humanity was truly capable of. He could only hope he was not too late. 6 weeks after the war began, Counselor Nix arrived at Earth. His small diplomatic ship was escorted by human fighters from the moment it entered the solar system. The pilots were professional, but their presence sent a clear message. Humanity was in control here. Nix looked out the window as they approached Earth. It was a beautiful world, blue and green with white clouds. It reminded him of a dozen other garden worlds throughout the galaxy. Hard to believe this peaceful-looking planet had produced warriors capable of bloodying the Council so badly. They brought him to a simple building in a city called Geneva. No grand halls, no towering monuments, just a quiet conference room with a table and chairs. Admiral Jake Morrison and Ambassador Lisa Chen were waiting for him. "Counselor Nix," Jake said, standing to greet him. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for seeing me," Nix replied. He was surprised by the courtesy. After 6 weeks of brutal war, he had expected anger or triumph. Instead, these 2 humans seemed simply tired. Lisa gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. Would you like anything? Water? Food?" "Just water, thank you." They sat together at the table. It was strangely informal compared to the Grand Council chambers. Nix found himself preferring it. This felt like a conversation between equals, not a judgment from above. "I assume you are here to discuss peace terms," Jake said. "I am," Nix confirmed. "The Council recognizes that this war has not gone as expected. We are prepared to negotiate." "Negotiate or dictate?" Lisa asked quietly. Nix met her eyes. "Negotiate. Truly negotiate this time. I apologize for how we treated you before. The council was wrong. I tried to tell them, but they would not listen. They believed humanity was weak. They believed you were desperate. They believed their own propaganda about human primitiveness. And now, Jake asked, now they know better. Now they understand that humanity is not primitive, not weak, and not to be dismissed. You have proven that in the most painful way possible. Jake pulled up a data pad. Before we discuss terms, let me show you something. These are casualty reports. Council forces, 800 ships destroyed in the first battle, 1,200 damaged, 4,000 personnel killed, 9,000 wounded. Human forces, 300 ships lost across all engagements, 1,500 personnel killed, 4,000 wounded. He set down the pad. We are not celebrating those numbers, Counselor. Every human death is a tragedy. But these numbers tell a story. In 6 weeks of war, we have inflicted 3 times the casualties we have taken, despite being outnumbered 10-1 at the start. I am aware, Nix said quietly. The Council still has numerical superiority, Lisa added. If you mobilized every ship from every member species, you could probably still win through sheer attrition, but the cost would be devastating. How many ships are you willing to lose? How many species will continue fighting when their economies collapse from the disruption? How many council members will stay loyal when human raiders keep hitting their infrastructure? Nix nodded slowly. You are right, of course. The council could win, but the price would be too high. Several member species have already withdrawn from the coalition. Others are close to doing so. The unity that has held the council together for 10,000 years is fracturing. That is why I am here. So what does the council offer? Jake asked. Nix took a breath. This was the hard part. Complete recognition of all human territorial claims. No restrictions on your military, no reparations. Fair trade agreements with any council species who wish to establish them. And a formal apology from the council for the unprovoked attack on your colonies that started this conflict. Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. They had discussed possible terms before this meeting. What Nix offered was close to their minimum requirements, but not quite everything they wanted. That is a good start, Lisa said. But there is one more thing we need. What is that? The Council must publicly acknowledge that humanity are equals in the galactic community. Not subjects, not children to be guided, equals. That acknowledgement must be broadcast to every species in Council space, and it must include an admission that the Council made an error in judgment regarding humanity. Nix was quiet for a moment. He knew what that would cost. The Council's authority rested on the idea that they were the wise elders who always knew best. Admitting error would damage that authority, perhaps permanently. But the alternative was continuing a war the Council could not afford. I can agree to that, he said finally, though it will be difficult for some Council members to accept. High Chancellor Trelvor? Jake asked. Especially him. The Velkrin have lost the most in this war. He will view this as a personal humiliation. He should view it as a lesson, Lisa said. There was no anger in her voice, just sadness. We did not want this war, Counselor. We came to the negotiations hoping for peace. We would have accepted reasonable terms, but the Council insisted on treating us as defeated enemies before a shot was ever fired. You forced us to choose between submission and war. We chose war. I know, Nix said, and I am sorry. I voted against the ultimatum. I voted against the military action. But I was only one voice. Jake leaned forward. Counselor Nix, you need to understand something. This war could have been avoided entirely. During those 3 months of negotiations, if the Council had simply treated us with respect, if they had negotiated in good faith, we would have found a compromise. We were prepared to accept some restrictions in exchange for security guarantees. We were willing to pay limited reparations to the Velkrin for the border conflicts, but the Council wanted total submission. They wanted to make an example of us. He paused. That was their error. Not underestimating our military capability, though that was also a mistake. The real error was assuming that any species would accept slavery rather than fight. Humans learned that lesson in our own history. We had wars and conflicts on Earth for thousands of years. We learned that forcing others to submit never creates lasting peace. It only creates resentment that eventually explodes into violence. Senator Nicole Grant entered the room. She was Earth's senior political representative and had final authority over peace terms. Admiral Morrison, Ambassador Chen, I have been briefed on Counselor Nix's proposal. I am prepared to accept it with the additional requirement about public acknowledgement. She turned to Nix. Counselor, I want to add one more element. We need the Council to establish formal rules about how new species are treated. No more ultimatums. No more assumption that elder species can dictate terms to newer ones. The galaxy is large enough for many equals. Nix considered this. It would mean significant changes to how the Council operated, but given current circumstances, it might be the only way to prevent this from happening again with the next species that reached the stars. I will present that to the Council, he agreed. I believe they will accept it. The alternative is too costly. They spent the next 3 hours working through details, trade routes, territorial boundaries, security arrangements, communication protocols, all the technical matters that would make peace work in practice, not just theory. As they finished, Nix looked at Jake and Lisa with genuine respect. May I ask you something? During the negotiations at the Council station, did you already know you would walk away? Jake smiled slightly. We knew it was possible. We hoped the Council would negotiate fairly, but we prepared for the worst. That is what humanity does, Counselor. We hope for the best and prepare for the worst. It has kept us alive for a very long time. And the 3 months at the Council station? We learned a great deal, Lisa said. We observed Council procedures, studied military formations in the defense fleets around the station, analyzed communication protocols, and gained access to various databases. Not through hacking, she added quickly. Through perfectly legal research access that was offered to all delegates, we just studied harder than anyone expected. Nix shook his head in amazement. You were gathering intelligence while we thought you were just learning procedures. We were doing both, Jake said. We genuinely tried to find peace, but we also prepared for war. That is not deception, Counselor. That is prudence. The peace treaty was signed 1 week later. High Chancellor Trelvor put his mark on the document with obvious reluctance. Other council members signed with varying degrees of grace. Counselor Nix signed last, and he felt relief as he did so. The war was over. The killing would stop. The public broadcast went out to every species in council space. It was brief and formal, but the words were clear. The Galactic Council acknowledged humanity as equal members of the galactic community. The Council admitted errors in judgment regarding human capabilities and intentions. And the Council announced new protocols for interacting with emerging species. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets, not because of victory in war, but because of recognition in peace. Humanity had proven they would not be pushed around. And now, they had the respect they sought. Jake and Lisa stood together on a balcony overlooking the celebrations. Do you think it will last? Lisa asked. The peace? Maybe. Maybe not. But they will never make the same mistake twice. The Council learned that humanity does not accept submission. Other species will learn it too in time. And hopefully the next species that reaches the stars will be treated with more respect because of what we did here. Lisa nodded. What was that thing you said at the end of your speech to the Council? About them thinking leaving the negotiation table was our mistake? Jake smiled. I said it was their mistake, not ours. We did not abandon peace. We abandoned a table where we were not respected. There is a difference. And now? Now we have a real chance at peace. Peace between equals. That is worth fighting for. Below them, the celebrations continued. Humanity had won its place in the galaxy, not through conquest, but through the willingness to stand up for their dignity. And across Council space, other species took note. The elders were not always right. New voices deserved respect, and anyone who forgot that lesson would learn it the hard way. The galaxy had changed. The Council would never be the same. But perhaps that was not a bad thing. Perhaps it was time for the old order to make room for something new, something better. Perhaps it was time for all species, old and young, to meet as equals. The humans had shown the way. Now it was up to the rest of the galaxy to follow.